With Mike London and Jillian Whiting, this is National 9 News.
The Governor-General breaks his silence on school child abuse.
Rioters tear-gassed in another night of violence at Woomera.
The trucking industry faces an inquiry. Good evening.
Good evening.
The Governor-General has finally replied to his critics over the sex abuse scandal at an Anglican school in Toowoomba. In a written statement, former Brisbane Archbishop Peter Hollingworth says allegations of a cover-up are unfounded. He also denies claims that he was uncaring, saying his hands were tied by legal and insurance problems.
For more than a week, Peter Hollingworth kept his silence, defying calls from political leaders and interest groups to speak up. Finally, today at 5:15 Canberra time, the Governor-General put his case, saying it had been inappropriate to comment because of his position. In an extraordinary vice-regal step, Peter Hollingworth began by expressing his disgust at all forms of child abuse, and his profound sympathy to victims, including those of the deeply offensive conduct of pedophile Kevin Guy. In his defence, he said he had no involvement whatsoever in the normal conduct of the affairs of the school. Allegations of a cover-up, he said, are totally unfounded. When he learned of the sex abuse allegations, he proposed the school council organise and pay for counselling. He also strongly rejected claims he'd angrily dismissed complaints from the parent of an alleged victim. A letter was sent to a concerned parent. Overall, it's a statement that tries to correct claims of inaction, of a lack of concern and a lack of compassion. I am sorry that legal and insurance considerations, to some extent, inhibited our taking a more active role and more overtly expressing the Church's concern for the physical, emotional and spiritual welfare of those affected by the actions of Mr. Guy. One student, molested by the boarding master, has sued the Anglican Archdiocese of Brisbane and been awarded more than $800,000 damages. A second victim has begun legal action seeking $326,000. Tonight's statement did little to satisfy the Governor-General's critics.
What it should have said is sorry, and in the interests of all Australian children and their protection, I will resign today.
Lane Calcutt, National 9 News.
There are calls for an inquiry into conditions at the Woomera Detention Centre after another night of violence. Asylum seekers demanding visas pelted guards with rocks and palings. Tear gas and mortar cannon prevented them from breaking out.
Only a few fires this time. Instead, detainees stood their ground behind the fence topped with razor wire. Rocks, the weapon of choice, as they pelted security officers dressed head to toe in riot gear. It went on like this for 2 hours. At one stage, detainees broke through an inner perimeter fence. When they started on the outer fence, tear gas and water cannon were used to force them back. No injuries, even though 6 officers, as well as this maintenance worker, were hit by rocks.
Yeah, I got hit with a stone tonight.
What patience workers at the centre may have had with the detainees' frustration has, in the case of at least some, pretty much evaporated.
I've had enough of it. I've had enough of what's over there. About time we started sending some of them back home. Let's get rid of them.
But from Amnesty International, a call for an inquiry into the violence and the response.
People don't know what's happening to them, they don't know where they're going, and they don't know what's going to happen to them in the future.
The only inquiry the government wants is one to identify the ringleaders.
The Australian Federal Police and the South Australian Police are investigating, and I sincerely hope that those who are responsible for these outrageous acts are charged and dealt with according to law.
Not all those inside are of the same frame of mind. Of 8 buildings set alight last night, 2 were put out by fellow detainees. Mark Burrows, National 9 News.
In Afghanistan, American troops are scouring the caves at Tora Bora in the faint hope they'll find the body of Osama bin Laden. The Pentagon admits the trail has gone cold and fears the world's most wanted man has given them the slip.
No bombs, barely any gunfire. Afghanistan's calmest day in 2 months as alliance fighters rumble down from the mountains where the war on terrorism has become a search and recovery mission.
It's going to be tough, dirty, hard work.
US Special Forces with Afghan trekkers are mapping and exploring every cave, hoping, and that's all they can do now, that bin Laden and his men are dead and buried after weeks of bombing. But they're not optimistic.
We don't know where he is now, and he could be on the run.
It's a major turnaround when only 3 days ago the Pentagon confidently declared the terrorist had been contained in the mountain range.
You have several valleys in the Tora Bora complex. Each of them is several miles long. In each of those valleys you have several hundred caves, and you want to go through very methodically, one by one.
The US is also inspecting closely each of these captured al-Qaeda fighters in case senior bin Laden supporters are hiding among them. Pakistani military helicopters and American AC-130 gunships are watching the border just a few kilometres across these mountains. It's thought if bin Laden is alive, he may be on foot, staying high on the ridges, heading for Pakistan. And if he and his people try and disguise themselves and slip through the cities, Marines now patrol most streets. In Kandahar today, there was also a special reminder of why this is happening. A flag was raised, a giant stars and stripes flown in from New York, signed by the families of September 11's victims. In the United States, Michael Usher, National 9 News.
The man accused of plotting a September 11-style suicide attack in Australia is reported to have made a full confession to an Indian court. Authorities in Mumbai are so sensitive about the case, they went to great lengths to shield Mohammed Afroz from the media, even keeping details of his court appearance a secret. But his evidence is said to have been explosive. He's accused of planning attacks on Australia, India and London, and he's even admitted being at Heathrow Airport on September 11. A trained pilot, Afroz is thought to be a senior al-Qaeda operative. Australian and British officials have gone to India but are still waiting to interview him.
The Industrial Commission has recommended an inquiry into the entire Queensland trucking industry after hearing allegations against one transport company. The Drivers' Union says an investigation is long overdue, but further action could still be months away.
The meeting began as a time and wages dispute, but ended with a trucking transport shake-up.
Well, we've had a tremendous result. The Commissioner's gone ahead and said that there should be an inquiry called.
The union was hoping for an inquiry into Harker Transport, but the Commission recommended one for the entire industry. Commissioner Deirdre Swan told the hearing it is a matter of serious concern with regard to long-distance transport. It must be appropriately investigated by a competent body.
The Commissioner has made no recommendations regarding Harker Transport.
But some of Harker's transport practices were directly condemned by the Commissioner, and the company expects that it will be part of the inquiry.
We've got good people, good equipment and give good service.
One of the company's drivers, David Fleedner, blamed Harker's for pressuring drivers to make time. He fell asleep at the wheel and crashed, killing 2 tourists. He's now in jail.
She has strongly urged the appropriate government agencies to review the issues which gave rise to this dispute.
But an inquiry could be months away.
We've just received the report today, the recommendations today. We have to have a good look at those and see where we go.
Carl Stefanovic, National 9 News.
A warning for drivers tonight. Make sure your licence hasn't expired before you set off on holidays. The RACQ says a change in the law means anyone caught driving when their licence is out of date will be barred from the road for 6 months, even if it's just an oversight.
We think a little bit of discretion should be given to a magistrate to look at the circumstances rather than it being mandatory.
The government has ordered a review of the legislation.
We all like the distinctive smell of a new car and wish it would last longer than it does. But now there's evidence that it could be bad for you. A 2-year study has found high levels of toxins in new car interiors, which can trigger headaches, drowsiness and nausea.
Damien Connellan has been pricing new cars for the past few weeks and is no stranger to that distinctive smell.
It just smells a bit plasticky, and I guess it's because it's got so much plastic in it.
But the CSIRO has researched the odour and says the air toxics emitted include some that cause cancer and fetal abnormalities.
The types of volatiles we found in total are at a concentration that's double the level that's been found in some studies overseas to cause those effects in human subjects.
Drivers have told of feeling ill, lethargic and suffering headaches within weeks of purchasing a new vehicle. Car manufacturers are being urged to help develop a green air label to guarantee a healthy environment for motorists.
Has this put you off buying a new car? No. The unreliability of used cars is enough to make me want to buy a new car.
Matt Dowling, National 9 News.
Just ahead, another blow for New York.
And Tom tests his popularity in Nicole's hometown. You're with National 9 News. The Prime Minister has called a national summit to tackle skyrocketing insurance for doctors. Federal and state governments, insurers and the medical profession will be invited to the meeting early next year. It's been welcomed by the Insurance Council and the AMA.
What we want to see come out of this summit is justice for patients, justice for doctors, and a system that can continue to work without the madness that we've seen in medical indemnity in the past few years.
International events and more damages payouts have pushed some medical indemnity premiums over $100,000.
Air safety investigators have found no one is to blame for last year's plane crash off Wally in South Australia, in which all 8 people on board were killed. Instead, the Transport Safety Bureau has pinpointed a fatigue crack in the crankshaft, which destroyed both engines. It's a defect caused in part by using cheaper fuel. It's clear now that after the first engine blew, the pilot never had a chance.
If you're planning a day out on the Brisbane River, you can now check the water quality before you go. The Environmental Protection Agency has put sensors in the river to measure everything from salinity to sediment.
In 10 years of fishing the Combsley Reach, Tony Williams and his son Morris have seen the best and worst of the Brisbane River.
The river was just mud, mud, mud. But since they stopped dredging, the river looks a lot clearer, you can see the fish in the water.
And spotting the catch should be even easier now.
So the first level reading is 4.1.
A series of sensors placed in the river will monitor temperature, salinity and the murkiness of the brown water.
In practical terms, this means it would be an excellent day for swimming. The river is everybody's asset, so cleaning it up is everybody's problem.
But this information is not only for scientists, it's for everyone to use to check conditions. The information will be posted on the EPA website and updated every 3 hours. River users will be able to see the effects of downpour or drought on the quality of the river water and help spot that one that won't get away.
I got one, I think. Yeah, look at that. Who says the river's dead, eh? Come on, little fella.
Jane Hodgkinson, National 9 News.
Fate has dealt New York another blow. Its largest cathedral, the Church of St. John, has been damaged by fire.
I don't think it's so much asking God why, it's asking God help.
Manhattan firefighters managed to contain the blaze to a gift shop, but it's feared many priceless artefacts have suffered smoke and water damage. And Australian property giant Lendlease is backing a joint venture to save the Millennium Dome, London's massive white elephant on the banks of the Thames. The dome has been mothballed for almost a year after 2 attempts to reopen it failed. The new venture wants to transform it into a music and sports arena at a cost of $500 million. Lendlease's role would be to rejuvenate the area around the dome with new office blocks and homes.
It's not so long since Australian fans would happily give up a lamb roast for Tom Cruise, but do they still like him in Nicole Kidman's hometown? Well, he's just tested his popularity in Sydney, appearing at the Australian premiere of his new film with new girlfriend and co-star Penelope Cruz on his arm, and the fans went wild.
It was an energetic welcome that greeted Hollywood's hottest new couple as they arrived at the premiere. Tom Cruise mobbed by the screaming crowd, Penelope Cruz simply overwhelmed.
I really love this place, and Tom has said great things about Australia and the people here, and I would like to come back again with more time.
It was beautiful. It was good to be back.
And there were warm words for each other.
Tell me about that other Cruise, Tom Cruise.
Very good.
He's
good
popular. He's a lovely person.
Vanilla Sky brought Tom and Penelope together on screen. Off screen, the relationship leads Hollywood headlines.
A smile is going to be the end of me.
But the stars of Vanilla Sky have to share the limelight on this red letter day for movie premieres, with some strong competition from overseas. A huge crowd gathered for the Australasian premiere of Lord of the Rings in New Zealand, the country where the movie was made.
My God, it's amazing! It feels like coming home.
The city of Wellington in the midst of a Tolkien takeover. And in America, Aussie Eric Bana has his big break in Black Hawk Down, but took the LA premiere all in his comic stride.
Well, look, it's no different to the Logies, really, is it?
The film recounts the harrowing events when American soldiers were killed by rebels in Somalia in 1993.
Just watch your corner. Get all your men back here alive.
Nina Stevens, National 9 News.
Sports next, and the South Africans licking their wounds, Wally.
After their first test loss, Mike, but they're hoping to bite back tomorrow. The cricket's next, Tony Lockett's numbers game, and giant waves test the top surfers.
In red on his first wave.
Good evening. After their thrashing in the first test, South Africa will be praying fast bowler Alan Donald can make a successful return from injury tomorrow against New South Wales. The tourists arrived today in Sydney, where Australian paceman Brett Lee is the talk of the town.
Still in the news for his hostile bowling against South Africa's tail-enders, Brett Lee was in no mood to give his story back in Sydney today. Glenn McGrath wasn't ducking. He says anyone who believes the pacemen shouldn't bowl bouncers at fellow quicks is living in the past.
That used to be part of the folklore of the game.
Yeah, well, it's never been since I've been playing. I know when I'm batting, I cop plenty, and I guess I expect to cop a few because, that's the way I bowl when I'm bowling to them.
With match figures of 6 for 107, McGrath won back his ranking as the world's #1 in his trade. The 246-run win also promoted the entire Aussie batting lineup into the top 20.
Goes to show the calibre of the team we've got at the moment.
The Proteas also flew into Sydney today. The tourists have a 4-day game against New South Wales starting tomorrow, where Alan Donald is expected to return from a foot injury.
I feel fit, ready to go. It's just a matter of getting some overs behind the belt again.
After missing the Adelaide test, Donald also bought into the bouncers' furore.
They know they're going to get it back, so, I mean, that's this tail-end warfare at the moment.
And man of the match, Shane Warne, was dishing it out again today. This time, the salvos were on the end of a much-needed delivery. Clinton Fletcher, National 9 News.
Queensland has gone to the top of the ING Cup table with a 97-run victory over Tasmania at the Gabba last night. Chasing almost 300, the Tasmanians never recovered from an early loss and were dismissed in under 48 overs, the Bulls winning a bonus point. After Martin Love and Clinton Perrin had secured a sizable total for the Bulls, Stuart Law ordered his bowlers to attack from the outset. Andy Bickle rewarding his captain after just 4 balls.
A chance and gone.
Tasmania elected to attack their way out of trouble.
And that's a pleasing sight for the Tasmanians.
Introduced to stem the run flow, hopes soon lifted Queensland's.
Big drive and that's gone out. Caught in the covers.
The medium pacer's variation soon trapping the Tigers with 3 wickets in his first 2 overs. Displaying the swashbuckling style of his father Rod, Damien Marsh led a fight back. His loss signalling the end for the visitors. With 6 overs remaining, Tasmania needed to throw the bat around to have any chance.
Oh, now we've seen everything here now today.
The Bulls given extra cause to smile soon after.
And it's all over.
Queensland now on top of both the Pura Cup and ING competitions. Tony Lockett's return to the Sydney Swans is already causing him some pain. If he makes the grade, Plugger wants to wear his famous number 4, but teammate Ben Matthews won't play ball.
The jumper was part of my whole career, I feel, and yeah, I'm devastated.
When official numbers were lodged with the AFL today, Lockett was listed as number 46. And after waiting a week for decent waves, the Pipeline Masters has eventually delivered. For many, patience was more than repaid, with massive walls of water pounding the sport's best into submission, including former winner Michael Ho, who ended up with a broken collarbone. Onshore, commentators and spectators alike had their hearts in their mouths as the surfers rode the more than 3-metre swells.
Man, that was a suicide mission.
Among a number of superb rides, including Kelly Slater's, it was 21-year-old American Bruce Irons who stood out, winning surfing's most prestigious tournament. And the prize should be a medal for bravery there.
Safer playing State of Origin, Wally. The number of people flying Qantas has soared since the collapse of Ansett and despite the worldwide downturn after the attack on America. In October, total passenger numbers on Qantas were 24% higher than the previous year. On the stock market, Qantas shares slid 6, but BHP piled on 3%. Lendlease and Foster's also higher. Chemicals group Orica, the day's big mover, on a profit upgrade. Our dollar's weaker to both the US and the pound. And at Oz Lotto, 2 winners pick up $1.5 million apiece. Division 2 pays over $23,500. Natalie's next with the weather.
Then Gene Kelly wannabes singing up a storm.
This 9 weather update brought to you by the hottest thing to hit Warner Brothers Movie World, the Harry Potter Movie Magic Experience, opening December 26.
Good evening. More sunshine for the southeast today with just the chance of a shower or storm in the ranges tonight. Overnight temperatures were below average under the clear skies, 17 to 26 on the Gold Coast, 29 in Logan, 15 to 31 for Ipswich. The maximum was spot on average in Brisbane, 29 degrees, 28 in Redcliffe, Caboolture reached 29 degrees, cooler on the Sunshine Coast, 26. We're sitting on 25 degrees at the moment with 56% humidity. On the satellite photo, scattered showers and thunderstorms over the top end from the monsoon activity and some cloud forming east of a surface trough moving into the state. And that trough will produce showers and storms in the west before hitting the coast over the weekend. A high in the Tasman sending a weak ridge along the east coast. And taking a look around the nation now, rain for Melbourne and Hobart tomorrow, hot and fine in Sydney, a sweltering 40 degrees for the red centre. The showers clearing in the tropics with a fine day ahead for Cairns and Townsville, 33, heading for 31 in Mackay. Staying hot and humid further down the coast, 32 the top in Rocky, reaching 30 degrees in Gladstone, Bundaberg and Maryborough. Offshore, expect northeast northerly winds at 15 knots, high seas to 1.4 metres, high tide around 1 in the afternoon and the sun rising at 10 to 5. And we can expect more of the same in Brisbane tomorrow, reaching 30 degrees in the city, 32 for Ipswich, late showers and 29 in Toowoomba, 19 to 30 degrees on the Sunshine Coast, 29 on the Gold Coast. And moving ahead, temperatures sitting in the low 30s over the weekend. Showers forecast on Saturday and Sunday, clearing by Monday and staying fine and very warm mid-week. And just a little bit of a warm break, Christmas break, Jill.
Indeed, it looks that way. Thanks, Nat.
Thanks.
See you tomorrow.
Good night.
Dozens of young hopefuls danced up a storm in Brisbane this afternoon as auditions began for the musical Singing in the Rain. The show is looking for 4 boys aged between 8 and 12 to play the lead children, and there's plenty of talent to choose from. Tap shoes in hand, 55 boys turned up, some travelling from the Sunshine Coast for their chance to shine.
If I do, I will be really famous and I'll get to meet famous people.
The musical opens at the Lyric Theatre in February.
No show like an old show, is
No,
it?
it's one of my favourites. It's a beauty.
That's our news for this Wednesday.
See you tomorrow at 6. Good night.
Good night.